Hey guys, welcome back to the Midnight Movie. Bit of a change of pace for this episode. Maybe I'll be interested to see how this episode does at all. We have done a couple of Lucio Fulci movies. We've been some heavy, gritty 70s crime films, and this episode is polar opposite of that. We are going to be discussing Supergirl from 1984. And I know I love a lot of heavy movies. I love a lot of horror. I love very gritty type of movies. And Supergirl is the complete opposite of that. So, how am I talking about this movie? Well, I think it's really important to, one, have a really broad taste in film. I think that I watch a lot of heavy stuff, as I said. I love the existential sci-fi films or just existential films of Andrei Tarkovsky. I love the gangster films of Martin Scorsese. I love the cerebral intellectualism of the works of Stanley Kubrick. All these are, titans of cinema. All of them are worth watching and rewatching. That they're so full of great stuff. Of course, I love my Italian horror too, but I also like, and I think it's really important to have lighter fare in your movie mix. And just in terms of your mix of art, I personally can't just digest heavy and dark all the time. In fact, it's really not my personality. It's not really my overall sense of life. I write heavy stuff, but I'm not really a heavy guy. I'm a thoughtful guy. But a movie like Supergirl from 1984, it really is as much me as any of these other films that I've viewed. The other thing about Supergirl is it is one of the consistently most derided and unfairly criticized films, I think, of the 80s. And I think it's unfair because it is an absolute gem of a superhero movie, of that lighter, fantastic sci-fi. In fact, I think it's probably more science fiction than the other Superman movies made at the time, with Christopher Reeve. Supergirl sort of steps out of that mold while using the formula that worked really well for the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. Supergirl adds a texture and I think an excitement, a dynamism to that genre of movie that I don't really think we have seen since. It's a shame because this movie was so savaged at the critics, and I don't know if a negative critical review affected how it did in the theaters or whatnot. I was 6 years old when I saw this movie on VHS. There are moments in this movie that are really exciting and fun and pure and optimistic. Helen Slater, who plays the title girl, Kara Zor-El, is perfect. I don't need an adjustment period for her. She is as much Supergirl as Linda Carter is Wonder Woman, as Christopher Reeve is Superman. It just works. They absolutely nailed the casting. And Helen plays Kara as this pure, optimistic, innocent, benevolent young woman, which is who Supergirl is, or at least has been for most of her history. There have been some darker takes that have appeared in the comics over the years, some of which I dug, some of which I didn't. But this film is just a beautiful little snapshot of what the character is at her core. To augment that, they have a stellar cast surrounding us later. You have Faye Dunaway, the absolute legend of Hollywood, Faye Dunaway in the Witch. You have her sidekick, Bianca, who sorry, Bianca, who's sort of like her cigarette best friend. Brenda Vaccaro was everybody's cigarette aunt back in the 80s and 90s. You have the character of Nigel, played by, who the fuck was he played by? I have up here. More, holy fuck. Some English dude. Give me a moment here. Fuck me. Doesn't matter. Can't find him. Uh, Nigel is the sort of warlock mentor to the witch in training, Selena, played by Faye Dunaway. Uh, and basically, at the start of the film, we are on Argo City, which was one of the sister planets, or maybe the moon of Krypton, that was saved from the fate that Krypton suffered being destroyed, shoved into a pocket universe, and so life continued on there. We meet Kara at the beginning of the film with her mother, played by Mia Farrow as Allura, and the great Peter O'Toole, who plays a character named Zoltar, who's kind of a scientist slash wizard there on Argo City, who uh, helps himself to something called the Omega Hedron, which powers Argo City, and in the process of taking it away, runs into Kara. She asks, what do you got there? And he shows her, and he gives her the Omega Hedron and a wand, and she brings some type of large space butterfly back to life. Well, something happens. I don't know if there was an asteroid or something, and Argo City starts to falter. Omega Hedron sucked out of window out into space. Zoltar said he's going to fix it. Instead, Kara takes it on herself to get the Omega Hedron, flies away, and in the process of she does obtain it, ends up falling out of that pocket universe and arrives on Earth. It's at this point that she eventually runs into Selena, who is in the process of trying to take over the world like every good supervillain does, but also trying to score some love from the character of Ethan, played by Hart Bachner, who, he's kind of your standard 80s kind of hunk or stud character, who is basically entranced by Selena, but her spell doesn't take right away, and instead of falling in love with her, falls in love with Supergirl. Of course, Selena can't handle that, and as she continues to get stronger, because she has come into possession of the Omega Hedron, she is using it in a way she doesn't understand, seems to be tapping into some malevolent force that is not only growing her own power, but making the entire world less stable. Over the course of the film, we have Supergirl foiling various plots by Selena, whether she's trying to score herself a boyfriend or, again, try to take over the world. This movie is an absolute beautiful Technicolor, a gem of use of practical effects, of set design, of costume design. I really miss the classic Superman S that they pretty much have been using, I think, up until recently. And they're replacing it with the Kingdom Come S in the new movies or something like that. But I love the classic S. Kara's outfit looks perfect. She, again, looks like Christopher Reeve as Superman. She looks as if she walked right out of the comic, like most of the superheroes of that era did. There is a interesting mix and sort of juxtaposition in that you have sort of, Supergirl, Superman, the Superman family are sort of like the embodiment of super science. While they are, I guess, super powered, they're not supernatural necessarily. There's sort of a science, movie science, comic book science behind how they are the way they are. Usually you have those folks going up against, Lex Luthor and all these, various sort of Superman family villains. What I think is cool about the Supergirl film is she's going up against something that is completely supernatural, something that is malevolent and dark, basically demonic. So you have a character that is all light, very Apollonian, very bright, very optimistic, literally going up against true forces of darkness. Not an ethical evil like a Lex Luthor, but something more decayed than that. This absolute raw emptiness inside of Selena to sort of be someone through this just raw grasp for power and this desire to just be in control and to be the woman regardless. And in the process, she unleashes sort of this real dark evil on the world. Again, the cast is fantastic. Even the smaller characters, it's kind of fun. You could see Superman formula being applied in this film. And I don't think that is a knock on it at all. You have a character of Lucy Lane, who ends up being Kara's roommate at Midvale College. Something else that I had completely forgotten about this movie is at this point in the DC Comics, Supergirl was based out of sort of Chicago, Northern Illinois. Her alter ego of Linda was a student at Midvale College in Midvale, Illinois, which I don't think exists. I'm from Illinois. But it was kind of cool to see that, giving, Metropolis, New York, were sort of always one and the same within the DC universe. And, up until I guess this time, Chicago was Gotham City, but then they just put Chicago within the DC universe. And for the film, it was kind of cool to see Kara flying around the skyline of Chicago, flying over the pastures of Illinois. What's even cooler is the fact that, I mentioned the set design is really, really impressive. This entire movie was shot in the studios of Pinewood Studios in the UK and on their backlot. These folks over in Pinewood managed to build an entire Illinois town on their backlot, and it worked. I kept looking really, really close to make sure I didn't see any European cars going down the streets of Midvale, and I didn't. It was all a lot of Fords and Chevys of the time. I saw some, like early 80s Mustangs, and I think a Pinto, some, station wagons. They really, really nailed it looking like kind of like a, central Illinois town. The level of detail to the movie, I don't understand why people have a problem with it. I take that back. I do know why people have a problem with it. They can't possibly have a problem with the practical effects, which are fantastic. The set design, the costumes, the casting is great. I think it's that there's, at least of the time, I think there were a lot of very unhappy men that were movie critics. And if something was just a little too pure, a little too optimistic, they just kind of wanted to kill it in its crib. And I think that's what happened with Supergirl, because this movie is exactly what it should be. It should be pure, and it should be bright, and it should be hopeful, and that's what it is. It's what Supergirl is. It's what most superheroes are supposed to be. And unfortunately, our modern age wants to turn all superheroes into these tortured, existentialist anti-heroes like Wolverine and Punisher. And I'm really sick of that. It's why I don't really watch the genre anymore. Superman is not... He doesn't have those types of personal crises, and if he does, you're writing him wrong. It's just, Batman, sure. Wolverine, absolutely. Punisher, definitely. But not Superman, not Supergirl, not Wonder Woman, not the Green Arrow, not the Flash. Those are all bright characters, and that's what this movie is. And I think there's a lot of people who don't understand that superhero fare is supposed to be bright, optimistic, and hopeful, and that's what this movie is. There were apparently Razzie Awards, which are awards that are given out for bad performances in movies. It's something that's been around. I think they still do it. I don't know, but for decades they would award Razzies to actors that this organization that gives out the Razzie felt were just poor performances, and this movie earned two. One for Faye Dunaway and one for Peter O'Toole. And I have to say, these people do not know what the hell they're talking about. These are two absolute masters at their craft, Faye Dunaway and Peter O'Toole. There is nothing over the top about their performances. Maybe a little theatrical on the part of Faye Dunaway as Selena, but she is a witch. She's a cosmic witch. You get to be a little theatrical. There's nothing in this movie, performance-wise, that to me like derails it or takes me out of it at all. This could have been a very formulaic, bubblegummy 80s movie. There are scenes and parts of it, certainly the aesthetic of it really evokes mid-80s America and mid-80s pop culture in some ways. But it doesn't lean on that very hard at all. It's sort of a product of its time. At the same time, the character of Kara, aka Linda, aka Supergirl, her her outfit isn't dated. It's really what I think is really cool about so many of these superhero costumes, particularly the super family, is their outfits work whether it's 1960 or 1984 or 1997 or 2017. And there's nothing about they. I guess they almost put her in almost put Kara in headband, which I guess for a few years they had Kara in a headband in the comics, which definitely sort of like that aerobics jazzercise era of the 80s. And they decided against that for the movie, which good. They got rid of it in the comic, so good call, guys. But no, this is a fun, hopeful movie with really great actors, an absolutely fun cast. Um, Everybody sort of stands out. Everybody stands out, but nobody oversteps. There's no one that steals the show. There's a beautiful give and take within the script, and I suppose it's possible that maybe it isn't the strongest script. I'm not really finding fault with it. There's they really could have overleaned into the 80s and 80s pop culture, and they really didn't do that. I was really aware of product placement in this movie. You see a lot of A&W and I guess the kids in Midvale like to hang out at the local Popeyes. But again, that wasn't heavy-handed either. I just sort of noticed it. Uh, yeah, there's nothing wrong with this movie. Again, I think it's really important you can be a serious cinephile, you can be a serious movie lover, you can be a student of film, and you can love uh, the heaviest of the heavy, the most intellectual, cerebral, high art cinema that you want. And believe me, I do. You guys have seen some of the movies that I've reviewed. You can also like B movies, and you can also like sci-fi, fantasy, fair superhero movies like Supergirl. Uh, it's really important, I think, not just in the realm of art and of film, to have uh, a variety of expressions and of genres, but I think it's really important just as a person to have those things that those movies you can turn on and just kind of disappear and just really just, whether it's reruns of The Twilight Zone or Charlie's Angels, or you're watching reruns of Chicago PD, or you're watching Superman the movie, or Supergirl the movie, or Pokemon the movie. There's a fair amount of anime that I'll probably never review for this channel just because it doesn't necessarily fit. But yeah, I think it's really important as a well-rounded human being, even a steely-eyed bearded stud like myself, uh, who is existential and does look heavy stuff and loves to read philosophy and ponder life and the world. It's really important to have your Supergirl in your life, something that takes the load off of your shoulders, that allows you to sort of just disappear into a fantasy. I remember I was looking in preparation for the video that there had been a critic, someone who reviewed the film, who was complaining about that he said something to the effect that I wish there was a bit more logic to people's fantasy movies. I kind of get what he means. Again, I don't think it's a fair criticism of this film, uh, but to an extent, you only have to explain so much. There is a point where you have to say to yourself, dude, you're watching a superhero movie. You're watching a sort of sci-fi, fantasy, just fun movie. And you don't have to necessarily ask yourself, okay, well, how does this work? How does the Omega Hadron work? Okay, where's the pocket universe? Okay, it's a little weird. You're overthinking it. I think just there's got to be some level of suspension of disbelief, and just enjoy the film. Which again, you have all of the great shots of Supergirl flying and rescuing people and falling in love, but you also have some really heavy sort of dark sci-fi elements where this is the first film I think ever where we, within the Superman Supergirl DC universe, we literally go inside the Phantom Zone. The Phantom Zone that we saw that the three criminals from Krypton were condemned to in Superman the movie, broke out of in Superman 2, we actually go inside of the Phantom Zone. This movie does not get nearly enough credit for really pushing itself into the various outer reaches and corners of the Superman family's sort of universe. It looks creepy, it looks fun, it looks cosmic. And you see the struggle that Kara kind of goes through. At no point, though, while she's struggling, does she lose who she is. Again, the bright, hopeful, optimistic, benevolent person. And that's really cool. So, fuck what you heard about Supergirl. Watch these movies for yourself. This is another one of those movies like Exorcist 2 where I'm so glad I was exposed to these movies before there was an internet to tell me how to think about these movies. There was a real intellectual freedom, spiritual freedom even, to be able to go to a video store as a kid, as a teenager, and just pull something off the shelf just because it looked cool, because it looked good, and then take that home and watch it and enjoy it or not enjoy it as you saw fit, as opposed to the internet sort of groupthink, the internet sort of collective nihilism that surrounds films like this that are fantastic, gems, fun, cool, enjoyable. Reject that. Form your own opinions. There's been quite a bit of films that, starting with Blade Runner, that were heavily panned when they came out. John Carpenter's The Thing, roundly rejected critically, and people came around and realized what masterpieces these films were. There's been a renewed, it feels like a critical reevaluation of Dune from 1984. David Lynch's Dune. I love that movie. I live and die by that movie. I will defend it to the end. It is an absolute masterpiece. Supergirl is another it's a fun sort of, what I guess they were planning on it being a summer blockbuster. And I think that if people just would have gone in to enjoy it like they went in to enjoy Superman, maybe things would have been different. But there's a really steadfast following for this film, and I'm glad that there is, because I do recall it sort of being panned for years, and I was away from this movie for maybe a decade and a half, and I rewatched it recently. I don't think I was fully there, but in rewatching it this past week in preparation for this video, I really locked in. And I was like, what are people complaining about? This is fun. And, it's one thing to be critical. If you don't like something, don't watch it. But don't try to rant on other people's parade. You know what I mean? You do your thing, I'll do mine. And if you don't like it, I can't change your mind. But I absolutely roundly reject the critical hate of this movie. It doesn't make sense. It's fun. It's light. It's an adventure. It is well shot. I think it is beautifully cast. The color of this movie is something that really stuck out to me too. In an era where they are muting color in superhero movies, which is stupid. That whole Snyder thing. I really tried to get on board with it, and I can't. You need to bring back the color, the hope, the optimism, and the light to the Justice League and all those characters, all those franchises, including Batman. I'm tired of watching this absolute sad boy, nonsense. It's like, oh, my parents are, yes, horrible. But the character of Bruce Wayne steals himself from that. He's not running around the sad boy goth kid in a bat outfit. For the longest time, he was a badass who also enjoyed what he did, and it wasn't all heavy all the time. And I'm just glad that these movies still exist. The original Superman movies, Supergirl from 1984, because that is what these films should be, as far as I'm concerned. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. Check it out for yourself. Let me know in the comments below. Am I right? Am I out in left field? Let me know what you think. And if there's anything else out there, maybe akin to Supergirl from '84 that I should watch, that I should check out. What other gems are there that are just pure fun, innocent, benevolent, fantastic films that we can all use to sort of get away from life every once in a while. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.